Hello guys, unfortunately our final night in Slovenia has ended, which means we are on our way back to Belgium, but not before making a few stops along the way. We are spending the first night in Austria once again, and if you remember from last time, on our way to the Balkans we couldn't visit the Liechtensteinklamm because it was still closed since it was still the winter time. So that is our first stop. On our way back home, we are going to the Liechtensteinklamm, which is a gorge with a beautiful river running through, some waterfalls as well. And then we are going to the highest waterfall in Europe before spending the night nearby and then hopefully crossing through Innsbruck, which I really want to visit, and spending a whole day in Liechtenstein. And then we spend the night near the Bodensee and we'll try to spend some time along the Bodensee, the Black Forest in Germany, and then make our way to Strasbourg. So that is more or less our route back home. We made a quick little pit stop for Manu to take a leak. So let's get going to the gorge. We decided not to get a vignette for the first day of driving, which meant that we drove through the Alps, along rivers, through towns, and along melting ski slopes. And instead of 3 hours, it took us 5 hours to get to the gorge. We were so done by the time we arrived. From the entrance, you first walk towards the famous staircase, which leads you down into the gorge. The river runs through this canyon, and after 700 meters, you reach the waterfall at the end of the trail. You then need to walk back the same way. We were intrigued by the tree trunks of trees that had clearly fallen into the canyon from above. We didn't get a helmet here like we did in Slovenia, but they do have nets in dangerous places, and for the most part, you are walking inside of the canyon wall. The entire visit took us about an hour, and then we got back in the car for another 1.5 hour drive to the Krimmler Waterfall. This is said to be the 5th tallest waterfall in the world with a height of 380 meters. The trail is open from mid-April to the end of October, and the lowest waterfall is a 15-minute walk from the car parks. You pay €9 to go on the trail, which we didn't do since we ran out of time driving the non-toll roads. And to me, it seemed like multiple waterfalls. It wasn't one big waterfall. I don't think it should count. One final day in Austria, starting with a visit to Innsbruck. Here's what we did this morning. We spent the night at a random Airbnb in the Zillertal, and the next morning we drove to Innsbruck. Innsbruck is often nicknamed the capital of the Alps. It's a colorful, picturesque city surrounded by snow-capped mountains. The Altstadt, or Old Town, is very compact and you can easily stroll through the colorful historical buildings in no time. The Hofburg, or court palace of the former Habsburg kingdom, is one of the 3 most significant cultural buildings in the country. But instead we decided to pay for a visit to the court church. It cost us €9, and inside you can find the ornate black marble tomb of the great emperor Maximilian I. I had never heard of this grand historical monument, and I was blown away by the 28 large bronze statues of major European royalty, from King Arthur to Godfrey of Bouillon. They each have so much detail, giving away bits of their identity. The sarcophagus is covered in 2 rows of white marble reliefs depicting events from Maximilian's life. Next to the church, there is another room that you can visit. Here they explain who Maximilian was and why he was so historically important in an engaging and informative way. We had some currywurst and döner kebabs for lunch and finished by taking in the views from the town square. I might go back to see Cece's apartment in the palace one day though. We continued driving through the Austrian Alps, even passing the iconic Zugspitze on our way to a very tiny country. After a little over 2 hours driving, we arrived at the capital of Liechtenstein, Vaduz. We passed along the royal vineyard, but since the center of town was closed off, we continued driving. We have made it to Liechtenstein and we've already driven entirely through it, all the way to the south to a place called Balkans. And this right here is the fortress behind us, and there is a lot of vineyards, or there are a lot of vineyards as well. And in the capital you can visit the royal vineyard as well. Here we just went for a stroll. It is Saturday. During the weekend you don't have to pay for parking, which is good for us. We're just going for a stroll. We've pretty much seen all of Liechtenstein already. After taking in the views from the castle, seeing the Swiss mountains indicating the borders of Liechtenstein, we walked back down and had a look at the beautiful church before driving to the Stausee in Stech. Aside from the beautiful lake, there are lots of cute wooden houses here as well. We then drove back down the mountain, seeing the entire length of the country, and finally making a stop in Vaduz, seeing the castle, but mainly visiting the pedestrian bridge that is shared by Liechtenstein and Switzerland. We spent the night near the Bodensee, or Lake Constance, a lake which borders Switzerland, Austria, and Germany. The next day we started by visiting Meersburg, which is part of Germany and was where the Zeppelins were first invented. It also used to be the residence of the Prince Bishops of Constance, which is located on the other side of the lake. The old town is filled with evidence of this history. The old castle still towers above the surrounding houses and is one of the oldest inhabited castles in Germany, if not the oldest. If we had more time, I would have loved to take the boat trip to Mino Island. This one is full of flower gardens and must be stunning in springtime. The new castle sits above the steep vineyards overlooking the lake, and in front of it is the ferry port from where you can take the ferry towards Constance, which is across the lake. We grabbed ourselves some lunch at the local bakery, a schnitzel bun, a pretzel stick, before driving from the Bodensee to the Black Forest. Yes, the Black Forest that the cake originates from. We first made a stop at the Titi Lake, one of the many lakes in the forest where people gather to relax. We then drove through the Black Forest following the road with the best panoramic views, the B500. We initially stopped in Furtwangen because I read online that we could see the famous cuckoo's clocks, but the museum was closed. However, there was a fun local market going on. We grabbed ourselves a bratwurst, of course, and started driving again. That's when we found out that all the cuckoo's clocks in the world were gathered in the town called Triberg or Triberg. We drove through the town and arrived at the biggest cuckoo's clock in the world, just in time when the clock hit the hour. Ah, there we go! You can visit it to see how it all works from the inside if you want. That was some divine timing. We arrived just as the cuckoo was coming out of the cuckoo's clock, right on the hour. We continued driving to Strasbourg, where we spent the night in an Airbnb outside of the city and eventually drove to Manu's family near Paris the next day. We passed through the Champagne region all the way to the Brie Cheese region. This is where his family lives, right next to Disneyland. We could visit it for free thanks to his family member who is an employee and who kindly helped us for the visit. So we took Manu's godchild for a day on the roller coasters. It was a very unexpected but very fun end to our road trip.